Hello everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Story to Screen podcast, the movie podcast where we review all different kinds of movies, new and old. I'm your host, Chris, and joining me tonight is my genuine Tinkerbell. Maybe, he could be, but Joshua Ling. Hey Joshua, how's it going?
Is that my condition?
Well, can you fly and shake off some pixie dust and let other people fly, maybe?
I don't know. I've never tried.
You've never tried? I mean, how many times as a kid, have you tried to throw yourself off the bed and see if you can fly?
I didn't try. I succeeded at that.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to grab your umbrella and just try to just jump from a high point and see if you can stay afloat for a little while, maybe?
No, however, my dad has off the roof of his house when he was 5 and saw Mary Poppins for the first time.
I tried that a couple times, but again, I didn't have really that much of a big room, and there was nothing really outside for me to jump off of unless,
So you did the safe way, just landing on your feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I had my umbrella with me to see if I didn't get on the rooftop or anything. Actually, hold on. I think I may have tried it once on the trampoline, but my mom said, "Son, get off of that trampoline and give me back an umbrella or else you're going to break it." So she was worried about me breaking the umbrella than anything else.
Ah.
So,
well.
Anyway, folks, today's movie review is Hook, the Steven Spielberg 1991 fantasy film that has really kind of mixed feelings even to this day, even from its creators.
He's come back to seek his revenge. Only you can save your children. You must make yourself remember.
Remember what?
Peter, don't you know who you are?
What you just heard was the original trailer for Hook. It was directed by Steven Spielberg and stars Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. So, this is again, repeating what I said earlier, this is a bit of an interesting film because it's had a very mixed, if not negative reaction since its release, and I think in terms of today's regards, I think people kind of look down on it much, much more. So Joshua, what has been your relationship with Hook, and what have been does it still hold up, or it doesn't hold up today when you saw it just recently? So,
Okay, so I had never seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just recently saw it. I know about a lot of the baggage with it, but also I know of a cult following that really does enjoy Hook. There's a certain group of people that this movie was a piece of their childhood, and they really, really enjoy it for that. I knew all of this going in. I knew all the baggage. Overall, my relationship with it is literally just seeing it for the first time. Now, as far as my relationship with Peter Pan, love Peter Pan, and I have a feeling because of certain personality traits of myself, that was the main reason you asked me on here for this movie. Is
Yes.
that correct? The Peter
the
Pan
fact that you
connection.
could fly. Yeah.
Right. My particularly wild and wide-eyed look on the world. Is that what we're talking about here?
I guess. I guess, maybe.
So, yeah, that's basically my relationship with it. I'm a huge fan of Peter Pan and hadn't seen it before. So
Okay. Well, I guess kind of just seeing it, I mean, what did you think of it, I guess? Is my first question.
I thought that the core premise was absolutely what a reimagining should be. I think it's a very, very bold idea for a story. I think that some of the weight can't be carried in the amount of time that they have. And I think that there's a lot of good there that a lot of people don't see in it because of the movie's faults.
Okay.
So generally, I think it was a good movie that had a few things that made me go, what? So that's my general thoughts.
Okay. Hold that thought real quickly. Let me just grab a pen.
Sure.
Okay. Just writing down something that you said. Okay, yeah, my relationship with this movie, I remember watching it when I was like 10 years old or something like that. I was really, really young. And I kind of, I remember, all the, the Neverland stuff, so those are the stuff that really stuck out in my mind, and as well as Robin Williams. But as a little kid, you have a very completely different view and a kind of a different vision as to, in terms of how the film plays out and all that stuff. And then when you see it as an adult, it's like, okay. So I've seen it like 2 times just recently, like in the span of like a year. One time was when I got it on DVD. I found it like for $5, and then more recently when for this show. So it's got I think it's got a wonderful imagination to it. I think it feels like in some weird way like a what's the word for this? Like a non-canonical. I don't know if even that's a word. Non-canonical.
It's non-canonical.
Non-canonical. Okay, thank you. Sequel to the original animated Peter Pan film in some weird way.
Yeah, it totally does.
It has that feel, and maybe more specifically with the look of Hook.
Well, that and Dustin Hoffman also does a voice very, very similar to the Broadway Peter Pan Captain Hook.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you can...
very, very similar voice if you've ever seen that stage play video.
I've not. I know that there's like various, like interpretations, including a musical, but that, I don't know, like I feel like this movie honestly would work better if it was a musical, maybe.
Yeah, it might. Because, I do think... Go ahead.
I was going to say, because there are... I think this movie would work better because there's this... like you look back at the films from the 50s and, even the 40s, they have this particular... there's a stage production look to it.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, because a lot of them shot at MGM and, studio backlots and all that stuff. But that's what this film had. It had that kind of, kind of an artificial feel to it that was replicated on a film set. And you feel it. And I think that's the problem with that movie, because that look, it gives it, you're kind of, in a weird way, kind of led to believe that that there's going to be a musical number. And I think that's what this film was lacking, actually. And, dude, I felt the length. This movie is like, what is it, like 2.5 hours?
Yeah, it's pretty long. But I think that, honestly, for the scope of the story that they were telling, it wasn't even enough. Because it is, like, the story is such a huge, huge scope. The idea that Hook comes and kidnaps a grown-up Peter Pan's kids to force him to come back and fight him, that is a heavy, heavy story. There's so much there. You ask why Peter Pan grew up, you ask all these other questions, and that's something I definitely want to get into a little later in the review, is all the the consequences of, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like the what all this actually means.
The overall,
to the Peter Pan story, like if this actually happened, such as, just as an example, just so you know what I'm talking about, Peter Pan actually has the ability to grow up, which means that he's at least part human. Which
in the film you find out that he was born of a, from a normal, human being, and then a gust of wind pushed him to the side.
That is probably the weirdest logic point in the movie. It makes absolutely no sense. That is where I really, really tuned out, was in the whole explaining Peter Pan's backstory. I'm like, okay, you could have made this a lot more interesting. Personally, I was hoping that they would go with like a half fairy, half human thing, and that's one of the reasons he has a connection with Tinkerbell. But I think that would be interesting too, because then you go into, the whole dual nature, and whether he would go with his go save his kids, and be a human and be responsible and an adult, or whether he be a wild fairy man, I really think that there could have been some interesting choices made there, but I think Steven Spielberg is a lot more interested in getting the big moments right in most of his films, that he's not as into fixing the little nuts and bolts.
Are those nuts and bolts specifically character pieces?
Yeah, well, character stuff. And
I would say more so in this film. Because...
Yeah, but I've seen it in other films too. Like, he definitely has a great storytelling mind, but when he doesn't have other people to help him iron out the nuts and bolts, which I think he didn't have the right people in this one, it turned into a little bit of a logic problem.
Well, and that's the weird thing. And I'm going to put the length of the film aside, because that was one thing I felt, but I just didn't find myself, implanted or invested with the characters and their motivations and what was going on, oddly enough. I mean, with Peter Pan, Robin Williams' Peter Pan, he's grown up and he has his life, and his kids and all that stuff. He's not connecting with his kids because he's such a workaholic and all that stuff. But that was the stuff, I don't know, I wasn't really invested in those parts. Those are the parts that I should be touched by, and I wasn't.
Honestly, I feel like the number one person that I did not connect with, and I think it's just because Robin Williams to me has always been a comedian first and an actor second. Not to say that he couldn't act, he could, but it's a thing where he tries to get the jokes in. He's improv, he's vaudeville, that's what he does. But when you need a very heartfelt character, it doesn't always work. I don't think it would have worked had he been the genie in a live-action Aladdin. I think that the animation carried all of the emotional weight of that character, and his voice carried all of the comedy.
Yeah.
I really think that he was so focused on the comedy aspect that you couldn't get it, because I did connect with the characters, almost all of the other characters, with the exception of some of the Lost Boys and a few of the other characters. But I mean, talk about Captain Hook immediately. His psychoses, he's so magnetic, Dustin Hoffman. I think he did a fantastic job getting across his Hook's motivations. I thought the children, maybe not at the very beginning, but they both had interesting motivations. I like seeing how loyal the daughter was and how torn the young boy was.
Yeah. Those are good moments.
Yeah, I connected with characters, especially Tinkerbell. I think Tinkerbell was the number one.
I just think when I look back at the children from other Spielberg films, I look at Elliot from E.T. That's a very I really identify with that character, because I think there's a certain loneliness, and he finds this alien, and heck, well, even just the human characters in Jaws. I mean, Chief Brody. I think that's an interesting character right there. Maybe even the characters from Jurassic Park, but going back to Robin Williams, I think if you were honestly, if I was like a filmmaker and you were to tell me like I'm casting Robin Williams as an adult Peter Pan, I would honestly think that's a brilliant choice.
Yeah,
actually, because
initially, yeah.
Because here's the problem that I have with Robin Williams. I feel like he is so reserved in this movie, and he has some moments. You know, the times when the Robin Williams that he throws out the slapstick, jokes. I think at times they do or do not work. It depends on how you look at it. But I felt like when he finally became Peter Pan, there was just a sense of magic that was absent. I would even say throughout the performance. Actually, I don't know what it was. Maybe because I'm just gonna say this. He's good dramatically. He's a phenomenal dramatic actor when you see him in his other stuff. He can, Good Will Hunting, Dead Poets Society. He's a great dramatic actor. And, he can still bring comedy, but something about his Peter Pan, I felt like he wasn't cut loose the way that I think he should have been. But not in a, like, he goes all the way like he did in Aladdin or something like that. But maybe I'm looking at something like Jumanji, where I feel like he's let loose just enough to show his personality, but still being ingrained within the character and like confined within the story. I don't think that Robin Williams was in this piece, unfortunately. I don't know if that could have worked here, because especially when he does, especially like with the Lost Boys stuff, something about that part just didn't quite work for me either. But I didn't feel like he was cut loose in those moments in terms of his Peter Pan preparations. It felt like he was confined in the situations that he was in, and he was kind of, forced to kind of, he was kind of forced to kind of go along with the material of the script, and then he couldn't really improv a lot or anything like that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does to a certain extent. Let me ask you about the Lost Boys, though, because, I really particularly enjoyed Rufio, and I think that they did not do enough with his death. Spoiler, whatever.
Spoiler.
And I'm a big fan of Dante Bosco, the actor of Rufio. He's been a voice actor in a lot of very well-known cartoons. Most notably, he plays Prince Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender. He still has the exact same voice, too. It's kind of funny.
Okay.
Go
was
ahead.
His name again?
Dante Bosco.
Okay. Rufio.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, he plays Rufio.
But
yeah, the Rufio, I feel like his entire arc could have been a lot more interesting if they had expanded upon what it meant to be the leader of the Lost Boys, how he had obviously come to be, the next Peter Pan, essentially, and what his feud with Captain Hook was like, and how, he may have even superseded Peter Pan in certain regards, maybe in swordsmanship or whatever else. I thought he was a really interesting character that unfortunately just didn't have enough screen time because we were very limited, but also had a huge scope to cover.
Okay. The actor who played Rufio, I did not like. I like the concept of this arrogant successor, that's to Peter Pan, so to speak, the new Peter Pan on the block, that the kids have to kind of follow during Pan's absence. But I did not like his performance. I thought it was actually a pretty horrible performance, actually.
Was it the dialogue or
I
the
think
way
it was
he
the
delivered
dialogue and just his. I'm just thinking I'm honest, this is a Spielberg movie, and Spielberg is phenomenal with actors, and I'm shocked that this kid, it was just like he was just stoned or something, and he felt like, he was just that modern mentality, that modern personality or of the 90s, so to speak.
Right, yeah, and I think that comes through in the dialogue. He had a lot of very
totally go with the flow type of thing.
Very thuggish words.
Yeah.
But I think the main that was my biggest issue with Rufio was actually his dialogue and the fact that there wasn't a lot done with him. I did like the look. I liked the attitude that he had, but I think I think there wasn't enough made of the fact that he had to, like, the moment when he falls down on his knees and gives Peter his sword, right?
Yeah.
Like, that should be a lot bigger moment than it is. That should, to me, be like, I've been the king for this long, and I realize that the only way that my people can, deal and save your kids is for you to be the king.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that's a big, noble sacrifice that is kind of just glossed over.
Yeah, I don't think the movie does enough with it. It's just like, okay, Peter Pan's back, and because the movie is so focused on, like, okay, we got to get Peter Pan back to the shape, and I don't know, I think you could have done away with well, I wouldn't say done away with, because you did need somebody there to kind of challenge, Peter to get back into his, into that mindset, so to speak. I just feel like of all the talented young actors like you could have gotten at the time, I think he was still alive at this point. So I would have gotten, if I was Spielberg, I would have gotten River Phoenix.
Okay.
Because I think he worked with him on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and for the amount of screen time that they had, I'm like, well, that kid has personality. At least he has something going on there.
Well, that's the thing. I think Dante Bosco had personality, but I think the dialogue was really hard to service, and he wasn't a experienced enough actor yet.
At that point, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, if you hear Dante Bosco's other work, you will know, like, he is a really, really good actor.
Okay. Yeah, well, I did want to mention, Julia Roberts' Tinkerbell. Okay.
Odd choice.
Okay, look, I think Julia Roberts is a really cute woman. 90s Julia Roberts was really, really beautiful. But I felt, I could tell that she's giving a performance in isolation. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, you can tell that she's not interacting with other actors or anything like that. And I actually was listening to, It's That Bad podcast, and they were talking about, apparently she and Spielberg did not get along at all.
I can believe that.
Because apparently, guess what I heard? She was suffering from depression, that her boyfriend had broken up with her, and she was just not in a very good mindset at the time, which is weird. I don't know.
At that point, it's probably time to get another actress, if at all possible, but just because the role itself demands so much.
Yeah, I mean, she's fine. I don't think.
Oh, she does a good job.
She's fine with what she's given with. I just don't think. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad they didn't do like the whole like the look of her wasn't like the animated film look. It was kind of interesting that they made her like a tomboy. Yeah,
I like that. I feel like they should have made her a little bit more wild and jealous, though, because those are two things that Tinkerbell is known for in all versions of the stories, except Tinkerbell's Disney cartoons. But for reals, I really think that had she been more jealous and resentful of
what would she be jealous of, I guess, is my question.
Well, she could be a lot more upset about him going off and growing up. Kind of mad at him about it, whatever, but also realizing that things need to be taken care of, and then also fighting between how much she actually cares for him and how mad at him she is, I don't think I never got that. I mean, the moments that really stuck out to me is the moment when she briefly transforms into a full-sized human being, and then she's able to kiss Peter Pan. And I felt like that was her genuine moment right there. You kind of saw the true Tinkerbell, that she was in some ways in love with Robin Williams' Peter Pan. Yeah, I love that moment.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best acted moments in the film, actually.
I just think that she's so pro Peter the entire time beforehand. I think it would have been much more effective than it even was had there been a conflict in her mind up to that point, and then she finally gets her wish that she'd been wishing for all this time, like she says.
At that particular moment. But then the tragedy is that he turns... Well, and I think the tragedy is that he turns her down, I guess, in a weird way.
Well, no, it's more... I think the tragedy is she realizes the sacrifice that she needs to make at this point for the good of everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it should have gone, but she got her wish, and it's a bittersweet moment. I really like the scope that they were working with as far as Tinkerbell goes, because Tinkerbell, for all intents and purposes, is like Gandalf in this story.
She's the instigator in some way.
Yes, exactly. She's the one who pulls the hero into the hero's journey.
Literally pulls the hero.
Yeah, and flies him to Neverland. And when you have, there aren't a lot of chaotic mentors like that, and who essentially either Doctor Who a situation, like act all Matt Smith crazy, or even kind of have a childish wildness about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like having a mentor be childlike and wild. That just causes such a wonderful discomfort in the audience.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know.
What do you think about the dark and hilarious Captain Hook trying to commit suicide but not really scene?
Yeah, here's another thing too with the Hook stuff. There's no crocodile, which probably for budgetary reasons they couldn't.
Well, I think it was all budget, but also I think it's implied in the story that he actually at some point killed the crocodile.
Okay.
And he or the crocodile died of old age. Either way.
Yeah. Well, some people have said that the crocodile that falls on top of him was actually the crocodile, and I'm like, no. That's.
Yeah, you could say that. I didn't necessarily get that, but I thought, some people might think that. But
yeah, I guess I want to. Well, let's talk about Dustin Hoffman real quickly, because I think, I heard that him and Spielberg didn't get along very well during the making of this movie, but I do feel like he gives the best performance in the film.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because I feel like he's kind of emulating the original, at least he's emulating the original, the cartoon version. He looks like the cartoon version. I mean,
he's doing that, and he's doing a cross between that and the Broadway edition. If you listen to his voice, and you listen to the voice of the one, what is her name? It's not Sandy Duncan. Hold on one second. Mom, who was female Peter Pan? Mary Martin.
Okay.
The Mary Martin Peter Pan. The Captain Hook in the Mary Martin Peter Pan. He's basically doing that exact voice.
Okay.
Hold on. Oh, okay. No. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So, anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, it feels like Hoffman kind of gets the movie that he's in to some degree. That's what it feels like.
Yes.
And
he kind of sets the pace.
Well, here's the weird part. This movie is named after Hook, and you're thinking it's going to be a movie about him, but he's really not. I don't get the choice of the title, if that makes any sense, unless Hook is supposed to mean something broader in the title itself. Do you have a problem with that? Like this movie being called, being named after Hook?
Yeah, I really, and I hate it partially because Disney's kind of taken on this naming convention of one word, like Madonna.
Well, and then what was it? No,
Frozen,
Disney
Tangled,
didn't do it. Pan.
Yeah,
Pan?
yeah. We got Pan. We also had Brave from Pixar and Up from Pixar. I really hate the one-word naming convention because they just, they think people are lazy and can only remember one word apparently or something, or they just want to be artsy and sum it up in one word. And I'm like, no, just, you could, the sequel to Peter Pan that Disney did hadn't been made yet, so why not just call it Return to Neverland?
Yeah.
Like, that tells you everything you need to know about the
That's
story.
a more suitable title in my case.
Yeah,
in this
and
case,
so...
Because I don't... Well, I guess the problem is, like, what are we returning from? I mean, we didn't do any of the previous films. But, it's like, well, it makes thematically, I think, or story-wise, it makes a lot more sense if you name it that way. Because, and then Hook, I mean, he kind of indoctrinates the little boy, Peter Pan's
Which is
son.
awesome. That baseball game is absolutely Looney Tunes style hilarious.
Oh yeah. And he shoots that one contestant, or the one baseball player who tried to...
Yes, who's stealing second. That's just great.
Yeah, but that stuff right there, like him using the gun and all that stuff, and the clock, that's all... I remember all that stuff being from the animated film. All that stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot like the slapstick in the animated film, for sure. And by the way, I just looked up the actor of the Mary Martin Peter Pan's Captain Hook, and it was Cyril Richard. His voice is almost identical to Cyril Richard. He's very much channeling him.
Okay.
So...
He's kind of like doing a little Sean Connery to some degree. There's a little bit of Sean
Connery. There's a little bit of that mixed in, too.
Yeah. I guess, well, let's talk about a little bit about the themes of the film specifically, because I feel like it's a film... It wants to be like about something, but I don't think it really sticks to those ideas. Is it a movie about growing up and remembering your past, but having the inevitability of having to grow up, father and sons? I mean, I think if there's a theme, I think that's more so.
Yeah,
fathers and sons. I mean, do you feel
the themes are really confusing for sure, but I think the main thing that I got out of it is that there's a certain way that the world tells you to act. There's a certain way that your childhood is telling you to act, and supposedly you have to find in yourself who you actually are. It's an identity thing, where one group is telling you one thing, another group is telling you another, and you have to figure out what it is, and it's usually something a little bit different from both. That's what I got from it.
I mean,
but
in a way,
it's
Peter,
like you said, the father and son thing is thrown in there. All the interesting stuff as far as Tinkerbell and the Lost Boys is thrown in there. And then the other thing is the morality in this world in Neverland in particular, has always been very ambiguous. And this is more a criticism of Peter Pan as a whole than necessarily this movie. But the Lost Boys are really no different from the Indians or the pirates, which we see no Indians in this movie.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah,
if
there's one thing that's absent from this film, it's the Indians.
Yeah, but there is no morality difference between the Lost Boys and the pirates. Like, they both want to kill each other for various reasons, for blood feuds.
I would argue their means of killing each other are, a little bit more different. Pirates,
right, but they're just as cold-blooded killers as the pirates.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a lot more slapsticky and they use a lot more goofy, fun inventions and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a kids movie. But they're just as cold-hearted killers as the pirates.
With fruit guns or whatever it is, I feel like that's the Ewok
even
sequence.
Robin Williams. Yeah, it does remind me of Ewoks a little bit. But even Robin Williams was saying, "What is this, Lord of the Flies or something?"
Yes, I love that line. See, I wish that Robert Williams could have come out a little bit more, something like that. Yeah. But yeah, the Lost Boys. I mean, it was cool. You had all these kids coming out, but the body count in this movie is actually really low. I mean, there's only one person technically dies. The rest are just beaten up by a bunch of kids.
Right. Well, there are moments where Robin Williams with the sword will actually stab several pirates in the midsection, and
okay.
You can say that they probably died, but yeah, I know what you mean, and that's also part of the problem. I don't know that they really knew who this movie was for. To a certain extent, I know
would
they
assume
wanted
that
it to
the
be a
audience
family
from the
movie.
original Peter Pan movie, I would assume, it was trying to be in that same vein.
Yeah, well, I think that's a little bit more kid friendly than this one. There were some
Yeah.
A words thrown out by Dustin Hoffman. There was a lot of dark humor and death and wildness that really, while it fits the original Peter Pan tale, it's still a little bit strange choice if you're making a kids movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Peter Pan has a really, really, really dark story. People don't realize how dark it actually is.
The original source material?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not your average
It's
bedtime
much
story.
more in
nothing
that
like
grim fairy tale category. I really did like the moment where Peter that reminded me of dark humor. Peter Pan says, "Could somebody give me a hand?" And Hook says, "I already have." And everyone goes, "Ooh."
Can I speak? What did you think of the chemistry between Hoffman and Williams?
I think it was great.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of screen time together, except for at the beginning and at the very end. Is that it? I think that was
pretty
it.
much. Pretty much.
For a 2.5-hour movie. I mean, you basically spend the whole time just preparing him.
Yeah.
Which eventually he has to learn about, identity in a massive way. But I feel like for a movie, I feel like there should have been more between these two.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think that this story would have been better served as a novel. I know I've said that several times about various movies, but there are some movies that are way better as movies, and other stories that just need to be larger. They need to be on a bigger, longer scale. Like, say they did actually have a week to prepare him, that would also allow some of the other Lost Boys, particularly, I'm thinking of a side plot where Rufio tries to show up Peter Pan by going and getting the Indians to invade the pirates, and the Indians end up being mad at the Lost Boys because they lost a bunch of people. You could do stuff like that in a novel.
Yeah.
And there's so much you can do with this premise of Peter Pan growing up and having to return to Neverland. That's really interesting. Really interesting. And I think that's what carries this movie.
But I think the overall product is just lacking that magic. That doesn't
I don't think it's lacking magic. I think it's lacking logic. And yes, this is Neverland. This is like crazy, weird area, whatever. But there's a lot of wonderful, magical moments in this that make absolutely no sense.
Well, with fantasy, you can get away with a lot of things. Let's be kind of honest, with some exceptions. Especially if you establish.
I mean, it's Neverland. You're not going to be completely logical. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But like Peter's backstory makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There's the morality between the Lost Boys and the pirates makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The motivations of Rufio throughout the film make almost no sense whatsoever.
It just seems like a tough mucho kind of, I'm number one, I should be number one. And there's that really ridiculous, like, they're eating food at the dinner table, and it's all this invisible food,
Right, yes. Yes.
I was actually taken out of that scene. I thought that scene should have been more funny. I mean, yeah, they throw the food around when he officially becomes Peter Pan.
Right.
Because that's how the food comes into being, I guess.
That's not what I took. What I took was it is actually imaginary food, and they were trying to get him to imagine, and they finally unlocked his imagination.
So basically, wow, these kids are just starving. I mean,
no, I think they do actually
eating on
eat
imaginary
other times.
food.
No, I think they do actually eat other times, like for reals. But this whole meal was to get Peter Pan to imagine.
I don't know what it was. Well, I guess because when the kids started munching on the invisible food, I was taken back to like horrendous episodes of Barney and Friends and the Teletubbies, and I'm thinking, and I'm thinking of those moments, and that moment, I don't know, maybe Robin Williams didn't. He should have mocked the scene in a weird way. And he kind of does, but I don't know. I don't feel like I think he should have been let. Those are the sequences where I feel like he should have been let loose.
Yeah, been a little bit more third wall breaking, right?
Yeah, breaking the third wall or the fourth wall. Just kind of.
You got me doing it, Chris, messing up.
But yeah, I don't know. Again, I think this movie would work better as a musical.
Yeah.
And I think
it does have one number in it. The little girl sings.
Yeah.
Other than that's it,
And again,
and that feels ultra out of place because it's not a musical.
Yeah. But if they did a musical, would it be its own unique musical, or would it had to follow the Broadway production that had been done at that point? I think it had been done at that point, but
well, there wasn't one of Hook. There was one of Peter Pan.
Well, yeah, Peter Pan. I would assume that they probably would have done an original musical, and I think Spielberg is more than capable of doing musical. He hasn't done one, but I think
he has produced musical episodes of television though.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure he's produced other. He's been a producer on so many films, so I'm sure there's something there in his resume where he's produced.
Sure.
A musical of some kind.
Just for example, Freakazoid, Animaniacs, and Pinky and the Brain, they all had tons of music.
Yeah.
So,
And, he works with John Williams. So.
Anyway,
actually, for some reason, for the longest time, I thought Color of Purple was a musical, but no, it's not. It's a depressing character drama. Did you address the part of, like, the consequences, or you kind of mixed up a little bit there? You mentioned something earlier today about...
Yeah. I'll go into it just a little bit. Like, what does all of this mean in the end for Neverland? That's something that we don't really address. We kind of just go back home. I am of the opinion that Neverland is particularly interesting when you actually treat it as a real place and not just a manifestation of imagination.
I would assume that it's actually a real place, at least in this film.
Right, exactly. And I think that what happens to the Lost Boys, because in original stories they had a mother situation, and then Wendy brought them back, and Peter Pan was left alone. And so they adopted out all the Lost Boys. So really, we don't even get to that. We never get to whether or not these kids find their parents, which is kind of like the happy ending in Peter Pan. And we don't really get a lot of closure with that. We don't get a lot of closure with Hook's people. He dies, but what about Shmi? Right? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. It's just super low quality here and there. Anyway, but I don't know. And then what about Tinkerbell? What happens to her? Like, we just kind of drop.
Well, that was typical with a lot of fantasy films, especially like when you're going back, a movie that has like the real world setting and then you go to the fantasy realm. You just kind of leave things in the proper place. Like, you look at, what was the name of that film? Like The Wizard of Oz, you just leave. Well, but even then, you were kind of secured of the characters' futures to some, the Scarecrow, and even in Narnia, like you go back, you know what I mean, and you're assured that you're going to go back. Well, they didn't know they were going to make Hook 2 or something like whatever.
Well, right, but even if they didn't make sequels, there's totally open room for just saying that we'll see you again.
Yeah,
because that gives a certain amount of closure and happy ending.
Yeah,
or
Tinkerbell.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
becomes the.
I think that there weren't a lot of consequences in the end, but there were a lot of consequences possible that they really didn't bank on. And I don't just mean in the ending. Like I said with Rufio, for example, what does it mean that he is essentially stepping down? We don't.
What does it mean now that he's gone? What does it mean now that he's gone?
Changing from one leader to another.
Yeah, what does that mean now that he's gone and that Peter Pan has to go back to the life that he was originally meant to have before all of this happened? What does that mean? Yeah. For his arc, what does that mean for Peter Pan, and what does that mean for the Lost Boys and all that stuff? We don't get those answers because fantasy films at that point in time didn't really deal with those type of answers.
They didn't care about the fantasy world.
Yeah, it
Which
was all
is
about
like
we gotta get the primary protagonist, back to his world, as soon as possible. And I do think this movie did. A lot of people will say like, well, the biggest question is, was it in his mind? Was it in his? Was it real? And it's like, well, I think in this continuity, yes, it was real. So
Okay, Toodles flies off. It was real.
yes, yes. At the very end. Well, that's funny too. Like there were still again more little homages to the the animated film, because you see the top hat and the glasses. And do you see a teddy bear?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing there, and again, yeah, this movie is set in the real world, but yeah, I think it's funny. I was looking up some interviews with Steven Spielberg, and he's kind of distanced himself from this film massively. Like he said, like, oh, there's parts that I like, but for the most part, I just stay away from it. So, I did want to look up one more.
Kind of sad. I think there's a lot to be learned from the movie.
I don't think it's. I don't think it's a horrible film like most people have made it out to be. Let me just. Yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and just start wrapping it up. But in terms of our final thoughts, I'm just going to say I don't think it's a horrible film.
Yeah,
I don't think it's horrible. I think.
I really enjoyed it, honestly.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. There were logical moments where I went, "Ugh, that could have been done so much better."
And I think, if you're a huge fan of Spielberg, I mean, I don't think this is, Spielberg at his finest. I mean, it's not like Indiana Jones or E.T. or Jurassic Park or any of those films. Heck, this is not even like Schindler's List or anything like that. It's not a masterpiece. But it does have the imagination of Spielberg. I just think it's lacking. Well, here's the thing too. Spielberg was replacing another guy that was supposed to direct this film. I think it was Mike Nicholson, I think. The director of The Graduate was going to direct this film at one point.
Strange.
I know. And so I think that was probably the problem, because he was coming in and then he had to kind of real quickly rejigger what the film was going to be in his own mind in a short amount of time, I guess. Does that make any sense? I think that was a possibility, but yeah, I mean, the length of this movie is long, so that you're going to feel that. I think that's one thing you're going to feel. So, if you're not into long movies, don't watch it. I mean, but, I think for cinematic people, I think for film fans, I think you should check it out. I don't think it changed.
There's enough in there that you'll come away with something positive. There's no way you're just going to be like, that was the worst thing ever.
No, I don't think it's it was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Film of the Year, and I think
really?
And even Dustin Hoffman got a Razzie Award.
No, come on. That was like the best scenery chewing performance of the year, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, I know.
And I like certain villains that are scenery chewing, especially villains.
Yeah.
I think Vincent Price is a prime example.
But he's a classic,
Really, when you turn it on and really mustache twirl like Dustin Hoffman was doing,
I think he was doing
fun.
Vincent Price, maybe.
Yeah,
I think he did a little bit, but yeah. So you kind of gave a little bit of your final thoughts, but what are just kind of, do you recommend Hook? I mean,
oh yeah, especially to anyone who has any liking for Peter Pan whatsoever. It's definitely worth watching, because there is, like I said, even though they're not capitalized on, there's a lot of interesting ideas and, sadly not capitalized on consequences that really, to the Peter Pan legend, have a lot of interesting, I don't even know what word I'm going for here, but I don't think it's consequences. I've been saying that, but I mean implications. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a lot of interesting implications coming out of Hook. And if you like Peter Pan at all, you should definitely see it. Like, even the tiniest bit.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up with Hook. I don't know what we're going to do next week. Well, I think we're going to do My Darling Clementine, the classic John Ford Western about Wyatt Earp, a very romanticized version of the Wyatt Earp legend. So maybe you'll be, I don't know, would you be interested in joining me on that, Joshua?
I don't know yet. I'll have to see what I'm up to.
Okay. Again, audiences, we'll be doing our our countdown to Batman v Superman with our Dark Knight trilogy commentaries and Man of Steel, as well as our roundtable discussions on Superman the movie and Batman from 1989. So I'm kind of looking forward to February, actually. So anyway, Joshua, where can people find more of your work?
You can find more of my writings in rhyme over at rhymeandspace.com. That's where I write all my fun stuff. I should be posting here fairly soon a poem that I wrote, actually, that kind of encapsulates, Luke Skywalker and all of his history. And I'm looking to do some more of those with film and just all kinds of stories and things. So if anyone has any suggestions, hit me up on Twitter at jchristiank9.
Okay. So, audiences, you can find more of our shows on iTunes. Please leave us a review. We can definitely use some more. Also, please follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. We could definitely use some more followers. And you can email us at s2spodcast@gmail.com. So send in your requests and for future shows. So really looking forward to it. Anyway, folks, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And I'm going to pour some pixie dust over Joshua and myself's heads. And we're just going to fly out of here. So...
Wait, I lost my marbles.
Wait, whoa, I'm flying! Goodbye, everybody.
Ow!